Hello everyone and welcome back to Make Believe, where we're playing World and Economica. Last time, Yoshiharu met with Barton Clodwise to talk about investments as he was being scouted. Though, even though they talked a lot, no point did Barton ever say, "Come work for me." So that might be an important detail to look out for. As for when he got back home, we learned what happened with Chris and the big man. The big man was Chris' father, and they actually wanted to use Yoshiharu's help. They would invest on Yoshiharu so that he could bring them some income so that they can pay their own debt. And from that payment, from that investment, he would get his payment. And from that payment, he would pay Hagana for her program. So basically, she was getting 20% of 20% of what was invested. Which is like 4% of the total? Yeah. 4% of what was invested was going to Hagana. And yeah, I think that was about all I remember, really. Those two main points. Barton and the invest and Chris families investing on Yoshiharu to help them. And let's see where we go. A week after we took in her family saving, Chris came by nervously to ask about the results. Chris was uneasy, but I think I was more uneasy. In front of an uneasy Chris, Hagana laid out the numbers. It had gone up to 39,200 moles. Hagana was stately in her proclamation. She was as stately as she was confident in the outcome. Chris was apparently way smarter than you could ever imagine from how silly she appeared. Therefore, she should have been able to realize that they were still far off from paying off their debts, given that was only a 30% increase. I feel like that's still better than whatever they were coming up with, so she'd still be happy that they're making some progress. With those haughty demands I trust at them, it would have been expected that I would have gotten at least halfway to the final goal. While thinking about how Chris might pick up on that and tell me off, Chris, who looked like a curly-haired puppy, looked at Hagana while trembling. A curly-haired puppy, huh? I can kind of see that. Is that true? It's the truth. Oh my god, what happened? And then her legs gave away. I extended my arm hurriedly, but Hagana was quicker to get down. What I said is the truth. Hagana said that to Chris, with a gentle expression on her face. She then took Chris' hands and squeezed them tightly. Chris stared blankly at her hands and then at Hagana's face in front of her. I can't believe what's happened was written all over Chris' face. What I said is the truth. Hagana kept repeating that for the third time now. Hagana repeated herself. But being able to pay off the loans was still ways off. The 30,000 moles was what little Chris' dad could wring out as their last hope. And taking that money under such haughty demands, but not even making 70% of the goal with something I had confidence in, I felt a bit guilty. Wait, we're at 70% now? I thought you were talking about reaching 50%. Before this conversation ends, Yoshiharu is gonna regret that he did not reach the goal yet in 1 week. And because this was my line of thinking, seeing Chris' surprising reaction may have made me think of something immature. I pondered that not being able to see the picture and calculate gains and losses properly was why the poor would always remain poor. Staying in poverty meant that they didn't have any technical skills and talents. All they could sell was their time. I mean, weren't you guys talking about Chris having talent with math? Since all living beings had the same amount of time available to them, their time was cheap. People with technical skills could get more money for their time, and people with innate talents were rarer and thus fetched an even higher price for their time. However, that road topped out with doctors and lawyers. To get over that hump, one would have someone else do the work. In other words, one would have to become a businessman. However, one didn't have to just get people to work. One could also just get money itself to work. And all this talking about one do this, one do that just reminds me of Cloud Retainer. Therefore, paying off just the interest little by little like Lisa would have normally been a dead end. To break out of poverty meant to take the opposite road. Entrusting the nest egg to us and then being surprised at just a 30% increase was not the way to go. Those were my thoughts as I stared arrogantly down at Chris. However, Hagana said the following. It's true. So, you could buy shoes and clothes with the earned money. My jaw dropped unexpectedly. And from here on, it's going to go up even more. You could buy shoes, clothes, and bags, and I think there'd still be money left over. Does Hagana even know about the debt? This isn't something to cry over. I've enough cried. And then Chris burst out crying. Now Chris crying. And Hagana was unusually flustered. Oh, really? However, the person most flustered by this was probably me. Hagana's words pierced deeply into my heart. You can buy clothes and shoes. She didn't say that the money wasn't enough to pay off the debt yet. Rather, she said something more disgustingly practical. Chris' clothes was in various sizes that didn't fit her, and her shoes were hold-filled sneakers that were even worse of a fit. Telling her that it was better to buy something to replace them would have been a ridiculously obvious thing to say. And yet, I didn't realize it until she had said it. It totally didn't even enter my mind at all. Because all your mind was in their investment, the conditions, and the debt. To Chris and Hagana, money was just that. It was the reverse of when I trust those bills at Hagana. Saying what I said was the truth. Again, I failed to realize what money actually was. I didn't really understand what it meant to make money in order to live. Before I had stumbled into this church, I had certainly used the money I earned to pay for board, but that was simply a matter of saving up money like my family would. You can buy clothing and shoes. That was something that obvious. But for me, that statement only entered my mind when I was considering how I could save money. Ever since I was born, I had never had a situation where I couldn't buy something, even if I really wanted it. Now isn't that nice? These were things I took for granted. Hagana and Chris lived in a different world. Chris? Hagana called out her name. Hagana's emotionless expression was, in other words, the totally serious expression she'd always wear. I'll make it grow more. Rather than just plain crying, Chris was sobbing, staring at Hagana, as if she had come across a savior of the world. Hagana nodded slowly, and then, raising one hand, she pointed at me. How? He's going to make it grow for us. What? I was floored at the sudden mention, but Chris looked at me with trusting eyes. She had beautiful blue eyes. Staring into those eyes made me feel dirty about thinking all those bad things about her. I had recoiled, and Chris roughly wiped her face with her sleeves. Although she was sitting on the ground, she straightened herself and looked me straight in the eye. We place ourselves in your care. That was her polite statement. This was what we were really doing. Since our performance was enough to make Chris' legs give out, it was no surprise that more and more folks showed up to discuss similar deals. Oh my god, now you guys are starting a business in this district. Everyone's looking for you guys to invest. You're doing the investment for them. Why be hired by one of the higher-ups when you're making your own business? They were acquaintances of Chris and her dad who, not surprisingly, owed Toyama money. Wow, so many people owe money to Toyama, huh? Among them were many whom Lisa knew, and whose troubles Lisa knew like the back of her head. These guys had life saving of something like 10,000 moles, or 30,000 moles, although some even had only a few thousand moles of saving. Since they were willing to give me 20% of the profits, and I had to shoulder none of the losses, there was no reason for me to decline the offer. Because fundamentally, investing didn't really change with the amount of money, and the amount of effort required here wouldn't change. Only the amount of profits. Furthermore, the feelings of helping someone out would be stronger as well. A total of 8 people came by to entrust us with their money, and in a short time, our war chest increased to 200,000 moles. I really like the term war chest. Now we can help lots of people. Hagana muttered that comment while looking at the register Lisa made of names and how much money was given. Yeah, good to keep that registered. Even I, when looking at what a deplorable state Chris was in, felt it wasn't bad to help someone else make money. However, when someone came by with some money, a little part of me felt a bit more nervous. It was because the larger amount of money made it harder to perform quick trades. With 70,000 moles, it was possible to dump all of it into a single one of any number of stocks right away. But with 200,000 moles, the options were much more limited. If it weren't a large construction firm, bank, insurance firm, or an infrastructure firm, then just our own trades would move the prices. Therefore, we'd have to break the 200,000 moles into 3 or 4 parts, and invest in many more stocks than we had been doing so before. Theoretically, that would work, but would it really be fine in the end? I was apprehensive, but then again, these were groundless fears. I had room to breathe. If I didn't have to do something unnecessary, like pause and scrutinize each and every stock, then there certainly was breathing room for me. Furthermore, Hagana's program had been improving day by day, and I had started being able to just simply trust it from the get-go. In other words, I started simply taking what the program spat out at face value and using it to lay in the trades. Just like before I partnered up with Hagana, I swapped between dozing screens, not pausing to take a brief while camped out of the computer, and increased my profits endlessly. The gears were all properly greased and turning fine. The profits kept expanding, and the number of people who came to entrust us with their money kept increasing. Including profits, our war chest shot past 500,000 moles, with my share at 180,000, including compensations. And wow, you guys more than doubled it, because it was 200,000 not too long ago. However, something had to be sacrificed. At 200,000 moles, my head was spinning, and when we hit 500,000 moles, I had to relegate the virtual market to second priority. I was sure Barton was looking at this, but he should understand once I talked about the trade I was doing on the real market. Barton would probably be more interested in trades on the real market than the virtual one. If I could show off my performance here, he should understand. And thus, on the investment contest front, we hit a standstill right around the time we broke 50 million moles. However, the thorn in my side was that I gradually started losing enjoyment out of the profits in the real market. Perhaps my senses have become numbed. Yeah, because you were putting less effort into making those profits since you were entrusting to the program. So perhaps you were feeling that you weren't really doing anything. It wasn't really earned. Or perhaps the energy involved in trading had not only tired me out physically, but mentally as well. After all, it was 8 hours of continuous trading that didn't allow for mistakes or playing around. Right now, we had received money from more than 10 people, and the fates of 20 to 30 people rested on us. And furthermore, many of those were people who had been the type where the profits would finally let them buy a pair of shoes or some new clothes. Among them were obviously many kids Chris' age and some of Hagana's students. You couldn't even force me to say that it had gotten boring, because it was no longer thrilling due to the lack of gambling involved. Yeah, it stopped being gambling and more of just follow the line. I couldn't make recreational gambling trades. My head was stuffy, and I felt sick to my stomach. Once afternoon trading ended, I didn't feel like doing anything. Because of how Hagana's program worked, there was no real reason to follow the market news, and I had run out of things to do. But I also didn't like just staring off to blank space. So I ran away to Seralt's place. Really, to Seralt's? The Big Bow Cafe. Oh, hey. Look at that. Seralt giving him a ups. There's no numbers involved. Not a 6, not an 8, or any other number. You certainly come up by a lot recently. I kind of forgot the voice I gave him. While I was staring at an old film from Earth, the partition door opened with Seral's face peeking inside. The Godfather? You sure have some strange tastes. Godfather's a classic. So, what do you want? Well, it's not that I had something particular in mind to talk about. But, here. Seralt handed me a can of soda. Before accepting it, I asked sharply, would this cost extra? It's on the house, you bozo. Relax. In that case, I'll take it. I accept the soda and open it with a sound. I guess you like those films from Earth, huh? And not to mention they're all mafia films or war films. It's too moody. The chicks won't take that. Oops. Oh, shut up. I sipped and returned my gaze to the movie. It was at that scene where some henchmen missing a few brain cells decided to go undercover into enemy territory and got killed instantly. Why did that guy think the enemy wasn't gonna suspect him? Be like me and watch more romantic stuff. Yeah, romantic, huh? Like that movie we caught you watching when Yoshiharu came with Hagana? Isn't everything you watch just porn? What you say? And then, after intentionally looking furtively left and right, he came forward to whisper into my ear. I finally got some nice stuff featuring some girls who look just like Hagana, you know? Thinking that I'd be flustered by the comment, he swung his eyes over to glance at me. Wait, Can't you react a bit more? You monkey. Yeah. But what's so good about these types of films anyway? Wouldn't something with more explosions and metal against metal be more fitting for you youngsters? I decided to ignore him. I liked Mafia and war films because I understood how they operated. And besides, it wasn't something where a lone hero could solve all his problems. The characters were connected by thick threads that you could almost reach out and touch. And they were pulled by these strings as if they were puppets dancing on the screen. There was something on the stock market quite like it. The players of the stock market also had clear principles of behavior, but just one person wasn't enough to do anything significant. Quite poetic comparison he's making. I like imagining and watching such scenarios unfold with people reaching for clear goals. The mafia or an army squad making decisions so logical that they were illogical for the sake of their pride. Or friends made me tremble with excitement. There were basically no sudden surprise developments. Now that I feel like it's a little different from the stock market. Even if there were one, it would have been just the first crank that put the gears of the plot into motion. On the stock market, it was like hearing some unexpected news. And once the story hit, the game was on to see who'd win and who'd lose. Totally boring. Sarah butt in with a line while I was watching the film, pondering quietly to myself. Oh, grow up. I'm taking good care of my youthfulness here. Because Earth dogs are well known for having a mother complex for their beloved Mother Earth, am I right? Gravity is love, you know? Okay. Having said so, he gave up and went back to the counter. I like the tune over here in Big Bill Cafe. It's very energetic. I returned my gaze to the screen. Oops. But he suddenly stopped and poked his big head back into the booth. Oh yeah, there's a rumor about you two, you know? There are many ways to decipher an ambiguous statement. However, I did look back at Cyril's because his tone was oddly serious. Huh? About you and Hagana, you know? What are you, a gossiping grade schooler? I told him in a fed-up tone. He was dumbstruck at first, but then smiled wryly. No. I don't mean like that. Then what did you mean? I heard that you have been collecting people's money to use. That line felt like the spark that triggered a war between rival mafia factions. What about it? Does Lisa know? Of course. I shifted my gaze back to the screen. Rumors. Had people really been talking about us? Wait, Lisa really knows? Pipes, man. Yes. And plus, originally, I didn't feel like using other people's money. But I did it first for Lisa. Oh. Cyril's eyes shot wide open, and he leaned forward with his big head. Lisa owed people money? You're up too close. And yeah, you didn't know? I didn't. She lost a valuable book she borrowed from the university, and thus had a debt of 50,000 moles for it, and was out of options. Oh. Cyril slapped his hand on his giant head. She had told me. You didn't be able to pay it off? After I asked, Cyril was about to say something, then kept his mouth shut. He was probably trying to put on some meaningless show of vanity. Man, so that was the case, huh? But that program I made for Hagana, you're making money with that? plus my investment prowess. Well, yeah, let's put that aside. What? You doubting me? Don't get mad. The emails Hagana wrote were full of how said this and how said that, so there's no way I doubt you. That revelation totally caught me off guard. Well, that aside, what I'm trying to say is that you should be careful. What? People also know you swing by these parts, you know? You could be tough physically, but that might not work against some of these dangerous people out there. What? Like hackers? There's also that. At any rate, it'd be a good idea to keep quiet about collecting up that much money. This is the moon, after all. Well, I wouldn't mind if you think of this as just some nosy guy's advice. He was so serious, I was at a loss for words. Okay. You don't know what's going to happen in the world. It wouldn't hurt to be a bit careful, you know? After saying that last line, he slapped me lightly on the shoulder and went back to the counter. Certainly, letting people around you know you've been working with money that you collected had no merit whatsoever. However, I couldn't just return my money at this point, and the people who gave money to me were really in deep trouble financially. I had to do it. If I didn't, it was obvious what terrible things would happen. I went back to watching the movie. The film. Same thing. I had no choice but to move forward, like I had to follow some mafia bylaw. Just keep moving forward. 10 minutes later, I was totally absorbed in the film and forgot about Sarah's words. After I finished watching, I returned to the church. Despite going to Sarah's store and sleeping early, my fatigue built up steadily day by day. I had no idea just what was wrong. All I knew was that whenever I thought about training, I'd feel lethargic and depressed. Perhaps the number of stocks I had to trade in order to retain the same level of performance with increased funds was a bit too much. Or perhaps I was feeling the burden of having people's fate placed upon me more so than I had anticipated. After finishing morning trading, I was slumped over the table, having left unfinished the lunch Lisa prepared for me before she headed out for the Chinese restaurant. Oh yeah, I forgot she works there. Are you alright? Hagana said that to me during the break. She wasn't used to saying things like that, and thus her voice was faltering. Do now. Let me rest. Even when I closed my eyes, trading screens flickered in my vision, and there was a dull pain in my head. I thought maybe it was a cold, but it didn't feel like that. Besides a cold, there were other things I could be suffering from. Before now, no matter how tired I got from trading, all I needed was a good night's rest before I was ready and pumped for more action. However, that stopped being the case. Now, when I wake up, I'd feel annoyed that I had to trade again today. Perhaps it was a reaction to have made too much money, something I haven't done in a while. Perhaps it was something similar to the initial euphoria and eventual boredom one would get by cheating in a video game. If so, then it was simply a lifestyle disease in my mind. If I continued to pile on the profits, not only would I be able to save a lot of people, but I'd also be able to go to fantastic places. Trading too much? At that point, Hagana again talked to me. I looked up because her words piqued my interest. And if it was too much, what would you do? My wording came off as irritated, because there was nothing that could be done with all these funds without carefully making lots of trades. I have an idea. Hmm? I reacted so much that I surprised even myself. Not only did I look up, but my body got up as well. Hagana was sitting on the chair, staring this way. What? We could just automate the trading for the investment contest. I stared at Hagana's face. It was simple and a ridiculously clear solution. When I talked to Cyril, he took what we already have and extended it and quickly made a new program. Backtesting showed that while it couldn't really touch you, it was making clean gains. So basically, it's making profits by itself, but with how in command, it would make even more gains. Hagana opened the program on her terminal and showed me the test results. I squinted at the numbers and frowned with a dull headache. The displayed numbers had pluses and minuses flying around everywhere. Since it wasn't able to read the mood of the market like me, there were big losses, and the total performance was only a third of mine. Despite that, the fully automated program was clearly making gains. Now, right now, you look really bad. When I lifted my face up from the terminal, Hagana was staring at me, emotionless. I didn't need words to know that her poker face hid actual worry for me. Performance dropped, but with this, you could concentrate on the real market. Hagana's eyes were serious. Even if I relegated the investment contest to second priority, I still couldn't totally leave it alone. Now, I felt like the contest and the real market were starting to not be compatible with each other. And to think he started by just focusing on the virtual market. And thus, if something had to be cut, Hagana would certainly decide on the investment contest. This insightful observation was certainly plausible, but Hagana's eyes said that she truly was worried about me. However, I couldn't help but lower my eyes in response to that suggestion. An investment program to replace me? One reason I pondered over that was because the performance would degrade. If Barton were looking at the trading history, there was the possibility that he'd give up on me. However, the biggest reason was something much clearer. I was not needed, being replaced by machines. Where have we seen that before? And with that realization, I felt a chill in the pit of my stomach. I finally saw the pit trap in front of me that I had totally not noticed at all. The performance could be improved with some work. However, how? Lisa's always so worried about you. And so, don't need it. I cut off Hagana's words and replied, don't need it. I'll handle both. Yep, that sounds like somebody that's bottling everything up. Hagana was about to say something. However, I quickly interrupted her with my words. Mr. Trochet, in first place, had made a ridiculously amount of money. With this program, we wouldn't be able to catch up. It was seemingly sound reasoning, and it was the truth. However, the real reason was different. Besides, I wasn't trying to deny that I was putting the contest on the back burner, and thus I was concerned about one thing. Increase the performance? If anyone could do it, Hagana could. The program had been steadily getting better. However, I couldn't improve at the same speed as the program. One day, it would catch up on to me. And when that time came, what would I do? Why don't you go and find some easier stocks to profit off or something? Yeah, concentrate and increase the volatility. Yeah, I'll extract gains from that. Wasn't that our original division of labor? Hagana's brow bent, showing a bit of pain in her part. I couldn't tell if she was being worried about me or not. What I did understand was that I had somehow found myself in a bad situation. What if Hagana's program were to fully be able to copy everything I could do and become fully automated? Right now, my processing power was limited as I was just a human being. What I had at first joked about had started feeling more and more realistic. In fact, there was that possibility that her program would surpass me. When that time came, how much value would I have to Parton? And how much would I be worth to Hagana? Furthermore, I couldn't just reject cooperation from Hagana at this point. Chris' families couldn't pay off their debts right now. I couldn't push her away. Chris' families couldn't pay off their debt right now. I couldn't push her away. Yep, sorry. And thus, my choices were limited. I'll continue to do my best until the end of the contest. There were 2 weeks remaining in the contest. There's nothing that couldn't be endured. There's nothing that couldn't be faked over. Yeah, you're just putting yourself in a sick situation. Facing Hagana, who was hesitating on agreeing, I made my move, ignoring the moral implications. So please, lend me a hand. Hagana shrank nervously and then nodded strongly. She didn't appear to the Hagana who thought that she couldn't do anything. Right now, we had to collect a lot of money, and whether those people could pay off their debts rested with us. What I had said to her was the ultimate move. However, it was ironic. The more I relied on Hagana's help, the more my power waned. Being unable to smile even when making heaps of money, I finally realized where my fatigue was coming from. What I was doing now was nothing different from mere work. I stopped getting up early to read the news and stopped staring at the stocks after trading. I wasn't using the program to make money. It was painful because I had simply been relegated into the program's ultimate component. However, even if that were the case, I had to continue this way. Furthermore, I had to protect my standings. Before managing to secure the top spot in the contest and heading over to Schrödinger Street, I had to think of it as myself trading. Alright, afternoon training is about to start. I made my short proclamation and handed her terminal back to Hagana. Is he gonna just fall unconscious at one point? I was about to start another round of simple work. I had to endure it, and I had to hide my true feelings from Hagana. Imagine seeing this line out of context. The investment contest entered the final stretch, and Mr. Trochet must have used some sort of rocket fuel to send his numbers soaring into the 92 million mark. There was no longer any doubt that he was putting his leverage into full tilt via margin trading. I believe it would be absurd to be able to pull out his level of performance without using margin trading. Besides, the contest had entered the final stretch, with everyone starting to engage in massive speculation, and thus stock price movements became more chaotic, and one after another, the people started making lots of profits. Even I had reached the 55 million mark, but that was only 5th place. Before I had only been doing a little bit of margin trading here and there, but now I had to remove the safeties and was using them constantly. To my fullest extent. This was supposed to be bumping my leverage, but I felt unresponsive in front of the computer. This wasn't a matter of performance, but rather my spirits. The more money we made, the more Hagana became absorbed in her formulas. And the more she became absorbed in her formulas, the more the program improved. And thus, it started to show more and more how there was no longer a place for me. These past days, I started not being able to tell whether a stock was a good stock or a bad stock from a list. I could figure out whether something wasn't half bad, and I could figure out whether I liked a stock. However, I couldn't figure out anything besides anything beyond that. It felt like there was a veil thrown over my eyes. I wonder if Barton was looking at the trading records. There hadn't been any correspondence from him since then, so perhaps he had given up on a boring fellow like me who may be lying bash. What? It's just that so perhaps he had given up on a boring fellow like me after seeing the results. It was because Barton had called out to me after looking at the initial big gambles I had made. He probably had no interest in the fifth place person like me, who could only pick out loose changes here and there. It was said that this Mr. Trochet was a super elite who graduated from Harvard with an MBA and had been informally offered employment with Platinum Smith. Why would someone be able to retain interest in me when there was someone like that in our audience? What? And there was someone like that out there. However, there was no mistake that what we accomplished was helping a lot of people. And it wasn't just those people burdened with loans that I was talking about. Hagana gained confidence from our success and started looking more like a real-life human being. She had mellowed out unbelievably since we met, and she even sometimes became bashful. Lisa was happy about that above all else. On the other hand, I felt something heavy gradually building up in my gut. I acted out, nearly venting from time to time, but Lisa supported me. Saying it was because I was worn out from training. However, I knew that wasn't the reason. In order to not have my position taken over by Hagana's program, I had to be desperate. I couldn't express that what I was doing was irreplaceable, except through my aptitudes and actions. I was afraid that Hagana would seriously start working on the automated program if I didn't do that. Starting around then, I started waking up in the middle of the night from a nightmare. Yeah, he's starting to have nightmares. In it, with each answer I give to Hagana, my body started changing more and more into formulas. Like a jigsaw puzzle not fitting together, my body would collapse into a pile of Greek letters. I'd frankly tried to collect them, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't turn them back to my original body. During times like breakfast, Hagana was unbelievably courteous and would hand me a spoon or the sugar. However, I was starting to believe that it was some sort of intentional harassment, no matter how ridiculous he sounded. However, I was starting to believe it was some sort of intentional harassment, no matter how ridiculous it sounded. Right when I was about to cry from being driven to the limit, I received an email from Barton. I made some time, so could we meet? Sorry, but if we could start in the morning, then that'd be great. The appointed date was a normal working day. going out during the trading was outrageous, but there were days before I teamed up with Hagana where I'd stop trading and stare off into space. On rainy days, for example. Clinging to this email as a last ray of hope, I replied, "We could meet." The response came back quickly as expected, and it pointed out the Royal Central Hotel where we met before. When I told Hagana that I was going to leave mid-morning on a trading day, sorry, this double A here kind of got me mixed up. She was more confused than shocked. "What would you do about the trading?" She asked the obvious question. Okay. I had already decided on my reply. Can I just rest a day? Hagana's eyes flew open in shock at my words, but Hagana can do the trades by herself. We couldn't rely on automatic program. Why don't you get some rest too? Weren't you staying up late recently? Okay. Okay. Hagana nodded and didn't say anything else. The night before I was to meet Barton, I couldn't really sleep much. You know what? Let's stop here. Yoshiharu is reaching his limits with the whole trading both in virtual and real market, and then learning that the more they work in the program, the more it would be able to substitute him. Right now, he would be doing better if he focused on it, but how long would that matter? And while everyone else was trusting him and giving him images like I don't know what else to say. He is in a auto destruction path right now. He needs something to get him out of that zone. It seems like Barton's gonna be the case, but we'll have to see what's gonna happen. It could be really good or really bad, but that is something for next time. So that being said, see you next time. Bye.